Okay, today we are talking about how thermochemistry applies to our bodies so we can explain its applications to foods and cells. If you've ever looked at a nutritional label on the food at the supermarket or in your pantry, you'll see that we actually have measurements in calories as well as in joules. So we actually need to be able to find out how much energy is in food. It's a major application of chemistry to biology. So all energy changes can be described as enthalpy, and that includes the energy changes we need to live. Anything we do requires the burning of energy. So how do we get it? Well, food, of course, is necessary to our survival. But where that energy originally comes from is it comes from the sun. There's always a question on the diploma exam, where does the energy in organic compounds ultimately come from? The answer is the sun. Always, always, always. And that's because plants use the sun's energy through photosynthesis to create glucose. And that glucose ultimately is where all of the energy in every single living being on the planet comes from, almost. We're going to pretend that chemosynthesizers don't exist right now. So we've got three important categories of macromolecules we need to consider in terms of energy. Carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Yes, this does sound like Biology 20 all over again. So carbohydrates can be broken down into two different types. You can have simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates. Monosaccharides and polysaccharides. For carbohydrates, that includes glucose, which is blood sugar, fructose, which is usually fruit sugar, sucrose, which is the table sugar that we eat, and lactose, which is milk sugar. Do note some of those also are disaccharides, but they're still pretty darn simple. Complex carbohydrates then are things like starches, which are made out of chains of glucose molecules, and our bodies can break down those starches into glucose molecules. That's how we get a lot of our food and energy, and that is why we love starches so much, because our bodies have evolved to look for those high energy compounds. So glucose provides energy through cellular respiration, which has this process taking place within it. When our body burns 1 mole of glucose, we generate about 2,803 kilojoules of energy, which is a lot of energy. If we just converted that all into kinetic energy, we could use it to lift up an elephant pretty high. However, we don't, because we've got other things that we need for it. Excuse me. One important thing to note with cellular respiration is occasionally we do see diploma questions where we compare cellular respiration and combustion. Processes are pretty much the same. You can see that it's the same basic formula right here. Carbohydrate plus oxygen creates water and carbon dioxide. But the big important difference to know with cellular respiration is that it produces liquid water, not water vapor. And that means it can occur at much lower temperatures, which is good for us, so we don't burn ourselves up from the inside out. But it also changes the thermodynamics of cellular respiration, which we'll deal with more later on. Cellular respiration, just like combustion, is an exothermic process, and the reverse process of cellular respiration is, of course, photosynthesis, which is an endothermic process. Our bodies can also burn proteins. Proteins are those chains of amino acids. We usually use them as cellular machines within our bodies, but in a pinch, our body can break those down too and turn the building blocks into energy by converting them into carbohydrates. Same deal with fats, and in fact, fats are kind of good for you. It's just too much fat is a bad thing. Just like sodium's good for you, but too much sodium's a bad thing. Act as our long-term storage within our body, and fats are extremely energy dense. In fact, the group of chemicals that fats are most similar to, that we'll talk about at the end of the year, are petroleum products, which are also organic compounds, and they have actually fairly similar structures because fats have those long carboxylic acid fatty acid chains in them. So those are essential for our body for doing lots of different things. They act as vitamins and steroids and essential chemicals, but they also act as energy storage, and we can save up some of that energy long term if need be.